Well, thank you so much, Jim, for joining me today on the WaveCapital's guest speaker series on relationship building in a team environment. You're my 35th guest. How are you today?
I'm great, Garrett. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, thanks so much for joining me today, and great to have you on as well. Jim, you played in Super Bowl 20. You are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the College Football Hall of Fame. So many accolades, consensus All-American back at the University of Pittsburgh, played with my former ESPN colleague, Mark May. You also played with Dan Marino. I even met your former head coach at ESPN, Mike Ditka. So much to talk about, but Jim Covert, as a human being, not just a football player, but as a human being as well, what does relationship building mean to you?
Well, I think relationship building is in everything we do. I mean, it's from the first time when you're a kid and you're kind of friends around the neighborhood that you grow up with, and um, I think it's a really important part of your life. I mean, a lot of people don't take those relationships, or I should say, maybe they don't invest in them as much as they should. But I'm very lucky. I have a great network of guys that I grew up with, and we're still very close today. I just got back from a trip. Well, not just got back, but this summer I went on a trip to Alaska with a bunch of guys I grew up with. Actually, three of them I went to kindergarten with. So that's about how long ago it was. And we've done it. We did our 50th. Birthday party. We went to Montana, went fly fishing, and we went back when we were 60 again. And we did this Alaska trip because we said, hey, life is too short, and we want to spend as much time together as we can when we have the opportunity to. So that's relationships. I mean, it's an important part of your life, and I think people should invest in them if they feel like there's something that they would like to see continue.
Definitely, and you've achieved so much in your life, and want to talk to you about growing up, your collegiate career, obviously your professional football career with the Chicago Bears. Then you've become a businessman, and you've been a businessman for many years. So talking about the companies that you've worked with and people you worked with, and how that has shaped you as well as a relationship builder. But let's start from the beginning. I'm fascinated to know more. Talk to me about when you first started thinking that you wanted to play football. Was it at an early age? Did your parents, or were there siblings or neighbors, or what wanted you to get into football and start your life in that sport?
Well, I think where I grew up, Garrett, it's a little bit different from other places, especially growing up in the late '60s, early '70s, and in Western Pennsylvania. I mean, football is king there, right? It's not too many other sports. So I started playing football when I was 8. Conway Little Bulldogs, Pee Wee football, or Pop Warner football, and then had an opportunity to kind of keep playing. And I started early, so my brother and I, and all the guys in the neighborhood too. So that was it, right? So then I went to Freedom High School and got a chance to play for a great coach named Chuck Lucidor, and I learned a lot about how to win and how you have to win, and how much hard work you have to do to win, and sacrifices and all the things you have to do. I mean, a great coach teaches people a lot of things, and I was very fortunate to play for a guy like him. And he turned us into, we were a miserable football team. We had a guy that just before that wasn't much of a motivator. I think it was more negative than anything else. And I think a positive person that comes in as a winner and feels like they can motivate people, it goes a long way. So our first year he was there learning the system. We were a 2-7-1 football team, and the next year we were undefeated and won the conference. So that just shows you what positive reinforcement and a positive person can come in and make a big difference. So I was very fortunate to learn from someone like him.
And taking the time that you spent with him, and him molding you as young men looking into the sport, and expanding your horizons in the sport beyond high school. I'm sure he has been a mentor along the way. And what got you looking at the University of Pittsburgh? And did you get offers from other teams as well? What helped you decide on that university to play for the Panthers?
I think it was a lot of things. I got a lot of offers. I was recruited by, most places, most everybody. So I could have went anywhere, but I really felt like, Pitt just won a national championship in 1976 with Tony Dorsett. That was my, junior year in high school. And then, my senior year in high school, Jackie Sherrill came back. Johnny Majors went to Tennessee. Jackie Sherrill came back and really liked what I saw there and what those guys were able to accomplish the next year, and just felt like that was a place for me. I mean, I went there. I grew up in a small town in Western Pennsylvania. Never really went to Pittsburgh very often, only for like a field trip or something. We go to the zoo or the museum.
Yeah.
Never really went there very much, but just fell in love with the place, and I think it was more importantly just the culture, the winning culture that they had. We didn't have the greatest facilities in the world. We didn't have an indoor facility. We didn't have all those things that other places had, but we had the players. And I think it was all stemmed from the foundation that Johnny Majors built, and then Jackie Sherrill carried it forward. So I was very fortunate to play. I mean, I played with the five guys that I played with on the offensive line. We all started as rookies in the NFL. I think all five defensive linemen started as rookies in the NFL. I played with, you know, uh, had four Pro Football Hall of Famers on that team. I don't know how many College Football Hall of Famers on those teams. So, pretty amazing, and we're just happy to be part of that.
Very exciting. And, as I had mentioned just a short time ago, you had played alongside my former ESPN colleague, Mark May, who's in the College Football Hall of Fame. And then your quarterback, Dan Marino, at Pittsburgh, went on to also become a fellow College Football Hall of Famer, and as well as a fellow, Pro Football Hall of Famer. Talk to me about your relationship with Mark and Dan, as well as the other players who you grew so fondly of at your time in college.
Well, they were great teammates, and Mark was a few years ahead of me. Dan and I ended up being roommates at Pitt, still very close friends, and we just have those Pitt roots. So we talk about Pitt all the time. We try to attend the games when we can. I'm on the board of trustees at Pitt. I'm on the chair of the athletic committee. So I try to get back there as much as I can. But it was just such a special place, And then I just really had an opportunity to play for two great coaches. I played for Jackie Sherrill, obviously, who's a great coach and really cared about you as a person, and I'm still close with him today. And then I got a chance to play for, I think, the greatest offensive line coach in history is Joe Moore. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we have the Joe Moore Award, which is presented every year to the best college football line in the country. We just presented it to Michigan. First time we had a back-to-back winner. So, I mean, this whole coaching staff that I played with and the people that I played with, coaching staff and coaches, so they were just all timers, right? So I mean, Pitt was a really special place in the '70s and early '80s, and I was just really fortunate to be part of that.
And were you involved, because you talk about relationship building with people like Dan and Mark and all your teammates and all the coaches, and Coach Moore, who you feel like is the best offensive lineman coach who's ever lived, right? I mean, he's so special to you, in your words. I mean, if you feel that strongly about your coach, I mean, that says a lot because of the impacts that coaches have on their players, and then the friendships, the relationships that last a lifetime. How much were you involved in the community in Pittsburgh? Because you had mentioned that up until going to the University of Pittsburgh, other than a field trip when you were a child or younger, you had not experienced Pittsburgh as a city. So you talk about the 60s and 70s, and those were defining decades in our country. So in Western Pennsylvania, as a college student and at Pittsburgh, were there things that you've noticed or things that you were part of or that you witnessed, or were there any examples of relationship building that you could share with me?
Well, I think when you're playing college football at a place like Pitt, um, and it's very difficult to really engage in the community as much as you would want to, just based on the fact that being a Division I athlete at a place that's in the top five every year where we were, pretty hard. It is a full-time job. So, they kept you pretty busy. Every once in a while we were able to go out and spend some time with folks in the community and they would get us involved in different things. I think it's way better now because I think Coach Narduzzi does a great job of getting the kids engaged in the community, right? I mean, they're going to high schools, they're going to local schools, they're doing community events, they're doing fundraisers, they're doing blood drives, they're doing, all kinds of things. I think it can benefit the community and have more community development and involvement. We just didn't get an opportunity to do that as much. I think I was really lucky because when I got to Chicago, I was able to do a lot of that. And I think it's because, as a professional, you have an off season, you're able to get engaged in the community. I was involved with dozens of charities that I think made a big difference in the city. But it's hard to do that when you're that young and you're playing at such a high level that we were at that time, Pitt. But one thing, when you talk about, I want to just go back to Joe Moore. I just want to say one thing about him real quick is that, the one interesting thing about playing football was that, when I went there, I was a defensive lineman and kind of took me a while to find my footing. And, I was immature. And it was, had a difficult time there my first, couple years at Pitt and actually thought about transferring. And, I just never found my place, when I first got there. And then after right after my sophomore year, Coach Moore, I got redshirted because I hurt my shoulder, and I went back to spring ball, and Coach Moore said wanted me to move to offense, so I ended up moving to offense, and I had a little bit of confidence problem because of not playing right away, and I was disappointed by that. And after my first practice at offensive line, he said, "You're going to be an All-American someday," and he could have said anything, right? I mean,
Sure.
but just that positive reinforcement, I would have ran through a brick wall for the guy, right? So he just expected so much from you, and he got it. But he demanded a lot, and he wanted to see you be successful. And once you were, he took great pride in seeing you achieve those successes. So this is a guy that was hard on you, but if you got too big for your britches, he'd knock you down a peg or two. But he always never left you down there very long. He always brought you back up. And so much of coaching is relationships, right? Finding what makes people tick, because you can't treat everybody the same in coaching. Just impossible. You treat guys that get it and guys that work hard and guys that show up every day like professionals. I don't care if it's high school, college, or the pros, and do their job and do it well. Those aren't the guys you have to coach very much, right? It's the guys that could be great that never can. They just don't realize it yet, right? And you just want them to see that potential, and once they see it and believe it, then they can achieve it. And I think that's what's a great thing about coaching.
Well, I mean, you bring up an excellent example, and that's part of your life, and it's a defining moment in your life. And you're exactly right. He could have said anything, but what he said, he meant. And he saw the potential in you as a future offensive lineman or soon to be offensive lineman for Pitt instead of being on the defensive side. And he saw great potential in you. And that one thing, the most important thing he could have said to you, gave you confidence, and it made you change your whole perspective on that part of the sport and being a part of the offensive line. And he gave you the confidence, not just because he said it, because he saw the potential and he knew you were going to be an All-American. He was exactly right. You were consensus All-American at Pitt, and when you got to the Bears, I mean, you made the All-Rookie team You were recognized, on the All Rookie team in the NFL, and then by 1986, you were Offensive Lineman of the Year in the National Football League. So when you think about what Coach Moore did for you, and what you did for him and what you did for the team, and obviously it takes a village, right, to have a successful organization, whether it's a company or whether it's a football team, a family where people might worship in a church or synagogue, where have you. You felt like, and you said it yourself, that you'd run through a brick wall for him. You'd do anything for him. So it's what that speaks to is that he was like the missing puzzle piece to you and bridging that gap to the next stage in your career. So when you transferred on to, or when you transitioned and you got drafted by the Chicago Bears in the first round, how was that transition like for you? Because you talked about how much active you were as a professional in the community in Chicago. What was so exciting about playing for the Bears? Obviously, you won Super Bowl 20 with the Bears, but when you got to Chicago, did you feel like, hey, this is the right place for me?
Well, at first, I think I didn't really expect to be drafted by Chicago. They never really reached out to me. I got reached, a lot of teams did reach out to me. I expected to get picked, in the top 15 picks. And at least the way I was, what I was, my agent was told and what we were told. So I felt pretty good about that. And then kind of the first 5 picks got shuffled around a little bit because of the John Elway thing, right? And he got picked number one, but he was going to get traded. And then you had Chris Hinton, you picked, I think, fourth or something. So those guys swapped it. And then, I kind of fell to the Bears. So, you know, um, it was interesting because when I got there, I mean, we weren't a very good football team. We had a lot of great talent, but we just weren't a team. And I really believe that '83 draft is what took us over the top because you had a lot of great players in there that came in and played and started as rookies, which is rare. But I think we helped build that momentum there, and it was pretty good to see. So. Um, but just, getting there, I mean, we lost a lot of games, out of the gate. And, I think I lost, in the 3 years I started at Pitt, we were 33-3, 79, 80, and 81. The 3 years I started, I think we lost 4 or 5 games total. So I lost more games in like 8 weeks than I lost in, 3 years or 4 years of Pitt.
Right.
So, um, we just had a lot of work to do, and there were just a lot of guys that were there, just, weren't willing to pay the price. So they just weren't around very much longer. And we were on a mission, and, either you were with us or not, you weren't going to be. And I think that was the kind of mantra that we had.
Well, you played with one of the guys who I met back in 2005 at a golf tournament called the Hoopty Celebrity Golf Classic. Michael Jordan's longtime friend, Fred Whitfield, who is a minority owner in the Charlotte Hornets. Michael Jordan being the chairman of the Hornets, but Fred Whitfield, a longtime friend of Michael's. Fred, hosted for many years the Hoopty Celebrity Golf Classic, and back in 2005, I attended with my father. I met Michael Jordan for the first time, fellow Chicago athlete. And with all the Bears success in the 80s, Michael Jordan brought so much success to the Chicago Bulls. So wanted to know if you had a relationship with Michael, and if so, what that has been like. But I wanted to show you something really cool. And it's a signed autograph by your teammate, Richard Dent, and who was a Super Bowl MVP for Super Bowl 20. Talk about what an athlete Richard was like and what type of friendship you had with Richard, and maybe you could provide some insight of what led you guys to a 15-1 record in the regular season and then on to winning Super Bowl 20. What was so special about that year and your friendship with Richard, who I got to know well, and then we could talk about Michael.
Well, Richard and I are really good friends, and I played against him every day in practice. And um, I think I said this in my Hall of Fame speech. Sometimes we didn't like each other very much, but we made each other better. And he had a great first step, and he had a great pass rush, and he wasn't so good against the run early on. And then he became excellent against the run, and just was such a great all-around player, and one of the best defensive ends of all time. So I mean, you can't argue with that, right? So I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. We were rookies together, um, and like I said, we played against each other every day, and we're really good friends till this day. So I think that's what relationships are about, right? I mean, you know, it was interesting because early on we weren't particularly close, um, and then but we practiced against each other every day, and we respected each other. And then I think as our career got a little bit further down the road, we became closer. And then even after I retired, we became even closer than that. So he's one of my best friends. He's a great person. So and lucky to have him in my life. But then with Michael, I've known Michael for a long time. I've known him since he used to come in our locker room. Starting like '84, right when he came into the league, and I mean, he's always treated me great, and I just have a tremendous amount of respect for him. He's a great person, genuine, treats people great. It's interesting to see you got a guy that's one of the most recognizable people in the world, right? And you see him how he treats people is pretty impressive. So I really have a lot of respect for Michael. I think he's a great person.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I had the privilege of, as I said, meeting Richard. And I'm so happy to hear that Richard had such a profound impact on your life and you're like the best of friends. And then at the same time, meeting Michael, and I have a picture with him above my right shoulder. You can see on the screen. That was when I was 17 and I'm 34 now. So that was like half my life ago.
Yeah.
But when you're 17, and you have the opportunity and the privilege to meet guys like Michael Jordan or another fellow Chicago Bull who then became a New York Knick and played for other teams, Charles Oakley. I got to know Charles Oakley, and then there was like Greg Anthony, and there was Alonzo Mourning and Chris Paul, and just athletes of different generations too, and the late Joe Morgan, who was a phenomenal Hall of Fame baseball player. I just think about that time, and not too many 17-year-olds have the opportunity to be invited to a golf tournament. And my dad actually golfed with Richard Dent. So Richard that year was paired up with one of the golf teams, and it happened to be my father's golf team. So my dad got to golf with Richard and three of his associates. So every other athlete, whether it was Michael or others, Charles Oakley, others, they were each paired with one organization that obviously contributed money toward Hoop T Celebrity Golf Classic, and there's a foundation that's tied to it. And I was actually enrolled in an Achievements Unlimited basketball camp that Fred Whitfield had started many years before I ever attended there, and it became a tradition. So while I was in the basketball camp, and the chief marketing officer of the Hornets, well, back at the time, his wife, she would drive me to and from the hotel to the camp, and her son at the time would always be in the car with us because she'd be picking him up from school and dropping him off. And then he became a college basketball player. Hopefully he has aspirations to go on to play in the NBA if that's his choosing. But it just brought me back great memories, because from that point on, as I continued to meet other fellow professional athletes who then became businessmen like yourself, I always just think back to that time, because I think that was the pivotal moment for me, Jim, where I felt like I started learning about relationship building, because of all the people I met there, I never wanted to lose touch. I wanted to get their phone numbers, their email addresses. I wanted to write their names on 3x5 cards. And I've kept in touch with the chief marketing officer at the Hornets, Seth Bennett, and I just talked to Fred Whitfield by the phone today, who works with Michael at the Hornets. So to hear that you had a relationship with Richard and you've had a relationship with Michael, I mean, that's pretty special to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great people. So, you meet people in your life that are pretty impressive and have gone on to great things. And like I said, that's part of the journey, right? And it's you got to count yourself fortunate when you can experience different things and different cultures, but have friends that you've been known and for a while. It's pretty cool.
That is awesome. And so tell me about that Super Bowl year, Super Bowl 20, and that 15-1 season. Talk to me about just over the course of the season, what gelled, what worked for you guys to reach the mountaintop and win and be Super Bowl champion.
Well, I think that it started a year before that, when, we got to the NFC Championship game and we got beat by the 49ers. It was a humiliating loss. We didn't have our quarterback. Jim McMahon wasn't healthy, but we did get to the NFC Championship game and we just couldn't produce, any offensive firepower. We got past the Redskins in a playoff game at their place. Defense had a lot to do with that, and we ended up getting past them, but we just couldn't generate it at San Francisco, and we got beat. We kept it rather close first half, and then they beat us in the second half. We just couldn't get anything going. So, I just remember leaving there, and there were a lot of the 49er players were saying, "Hey, bring an offense next time." So I think that really generated a lot of um, fuel for us, right? I mean, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And on the defensive side of the ball, they were coming into their own. But what people don't remember earlier in that season is, I mean, we came from behind in the first 3 games of the year that year as an offense, right? I think we were losing 28-7 or something at halftime against Tampa Bay in the first game of the year. So our offense really came to play that year and scored a lot of points early and was able to keep in the football games and win those football games where theoretically, I mean, if you think about it, on the way they started, we could have lost all 3 of them. We started 0-3. So, I think our offense had something to do with the success of that team more than people give it credit for. I mean, we led the league in rushing, led the league in time possession. We were second in the league in scoring, led the league in first downs. Makes your defense pretty good, and then they got their stride and off they went. I think it's the greatest defense ever assembled. I mean, you can just watch it and feel the hits, right? So, I just think that a combination of that together um, was what made that team special, and that's how we won the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And talk about your relationships with Walter Payton and Mike Ditka.
Yeah, well, Peyton was, he was like a mentor. I really, was, lucky because Matt Suey and I were roommates on the road, and Walter and Matt were friends, and I was friends obviously with Walter. Matt were really close, and so he was always in our room anyway. He was the only one that had a single room. I mean, all of us had to share a room, so Matt was my roommate. So he was in our room most of the time anyway. So and we got a chance to become pretty close. So just he was just such a special person. I mean, he treated everybody the same. I mean, I don't care if you were a first round draft pick or a free agent. I don't care if you were a person with no dollars in your pocket or a billionaire. He treated you the same, and yeah, that's that's a gift. I mean, it's the same thing with how he talked to people. He talked to you like you were the most important person in the world to him at that time, and that's a gift too. So, pretty special guy, and Mike Dick. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Mike. You know, he uh, he was the right person at the right time, the right coach for that team, and he did a great job. And brutally honest. Sometimes you didn't want to hear it, um, but um, like I said, it was the right person at the right time, and I think he did a great job. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding. We won a Super Bowl, so that was it was hard to do, and he did it. So
Definitely, definitely. And I met him briefly and had a brief conversation with him when I worked at ESPN, and it was just an honor to even meet him. And he definitely was the right coach at the right time for you and your team. And he had a very outspoken personality, but he knows football, and he has every right to be outspoken because he led your team and he knew exactly what it took to win. And he knew that his players and his staff were also needed to help him guide your team to a Super Bowl and to win a Super Bowl. So I think it's forever known as one of the best, if not the best, defenses in NFL history. So to think that you started your career as a defensive lineman, and then to think that you're on a Super Bowl winning team on an offensive line, and then for your friend Richard Dent, who is a great legendary defensive lineman. It's amazing how, life just takes you down a path that you never thought could be possible with the people who enter your life and the people who play their respective positions and fill his or her roles in any organization, whether it's a football team or a company or what have you. But you are part of a very special team, and you were a very special talent. But with relationship building, just because you retire from a sport doesn't mean that you can't take on other roles and in other capacities, and to continue learning and growing and being mentors to others, and educating yourself on other areas of life. So when you retired, I believe in 1993, what was crossing into your mind, going into a new decade, and that your playing days are behind you? What led you into the business world, and talk to me about those experiences.
Well, I was lucky. My last year was I was on IR in '91, so I retired late '91, early '92, and um, we didn't make the kind of money these guys make today, obviously. So if you wanted to have a lifestyle that you were pretty used to, and that you wanted to maintain, you had to actually work for a living, right? Not a little bit different today. So. Um, Oh no, I just was looking around to see what I wanted to do, and like I said, Chicago is one of the greatest places, greatest cities in the world if you're a professional athlete, to stay in and work. So I was able to network through a lot of different avenues, and like I said, I was involved in the community. So there were several charitable organizations I was involved in, and you had CEOs that were involved in that. So I was able to network through some of those avenues and other places as well. Um, and then I was fortunate enough to be hired by Baxter Healthcare Company, and started my career there in early '92, and um, it was great because I had a great mentor, a guy named Vern Laux, who was the chairman and CEO of Baxter Healthcare. And then my first boss, Paul Zimmerman, was a great coach and got me involved in all pieces of the business. So we were part of Caremark, and we had outpatient physical therapy clinics regionally. And I jumped in with both feet because I figured, hey, I'm going to learn this business from the ground up, and I'm gonna make sure that I am, understand each piece of this business from when a patient comes in, how they get treated, um, you know, billing, verifying insurance, all the kind of operational kind of aspects of that as well, and the financial perspective as well, um, on those businesses. And I was very lucky. Had, like I said, had great mentorship. So I was very fortunate, and just that's how my career started. And then I progressed into business development and M&A, sales and marketing, and just got experience. And I just tried to treat it just like playing sports. If you're prepared and you work hard, and you work as hard as anybody else or better, as long as you can get in there and do the job and perform, um, and work hard, good things are gonna happen, right? And if you don't, you can expect the result, right? So
Absolutely.
I was very lucky and worked hard, and I just said no one was gonna outwork me. I was gonna work as hard as I could to learn the business, and once I was able to get in where I was comfortable, then I was going to be successful at. So I was very fortunate.
And was it a comfortable transition? I could have used the word easy, but was it a comfortable transition because you knew that whether it's playing college football or professional football, it takes a certain amount of work ethic, discipline, focus, all the intangibles, all of the camaraderie that you have to build with your teammates and playing for your coaches. And, they expect, certain results every Sunday, and every day leading up to Sunday in practice. And then obviously taking care of your body and eating the right foods, and, with a healthy diet and, working out in the weight room and, studying your, different formations on the football field. And, you have such an integral part of a football team as an offensive lineman. So, and even made the Pro Bowl twice, right? On top of all that, which is so exciting because that just showed that you were the best person in your position in that given year, and you were recognized as a two-time Pro Bowler, and rightfully so, because you are one of the best in your position in league history. So I guess getting into the professional world outside of football and being in the medical industry, in the business industry, or the financial industry, if you will, was it the same approach? I mean, did you think that, hey, I'm really looking at the business world the same way I looked at the professional ranks in the NFL? I'm, studying, I'm talking to people, I'm, gathering information, I'm learning the ins and outs of the business. I want to be well versed and have a strong knowledge base and feel confident when I'm speaking to people or in a negotiating room or on a team. And, talk to me about the attributes that you had to carry over from your career into the profession.
Well, like I said, I think if what I talked about before is hard work, dedication, perseverance. I think the football players are just not words. I mean, there's something you have to live by, right? Because if you don't do those things, you're not going to be very successful. And I think any endeavor that you take on, whether it's in sports or business, you have to have the same mindset. And so that's exactly what I did. And I think, and for me, especially, I think I had to work even harder. And the reason I did was because, being a professional athlete, people, I let's put it this way, for as many doors that it opened up, being a professional athlete, it closed just as many because people thought, well, this is just another dumb jock. I mean, why should I listen to him? Um, where did he go to business school? Where did he go to college? Where did he do this? Why am I even talking to him? Right. So you had to work at it. I mean, you had to prove to people that you were ready to put in the work and you were ready to understand the business and you had a definite kind of um, commitment. And if you didn't, then you probably weren't going to be around very long. And I think it's the same as the NFL. I mean, that's why they call it the NFL, not for long, right? So if you don't do the same type of have the same type of work ethic, you're not going to be around for very long. So I try to do the same thing in the business world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't think of the acronym NFL as not for long, but it's so true because I mean there are guys that who are destined for greatness that then maybe an injury cuts their career short. And I think back when you were playing, if a guy got injured, that could be career ending. Maybe not just even season ending, it could be career ending. Now, if a guy gets hurt, whether it's an ACL or MCL or maybe it's a shoulder injury or a back injury, if they're out 6 to 8 months, with the right sports medicine practices and the right trainers and the right professionals who are and the doctors who perform the surgery in world class, and I'm sure it was world class at the time, back in the 80s and early 90s when you were playing. But you probably look at the game now and say, wow, it's so great that the NFL has improved in a lot of ways. But do you ever think that there are some things that you see in the NFL now that you wish still existed back then? Because I feel like humility is sometimes lost, on a professional athlete nowadays, where, when you talk about your relationship with Walter Payton, that is, and how he was so humble. And when he was talking to you, he made you feel like you're the most important person he was talking to at that time. Do you feel like that still exists, relatively speaking, at a comparable level now, or do you think that there's less humility now in professional sports? And I guess that can also change the definition maybe nowadays with respect to relationship building. But in my opinion, and probably you would agree that relation building is universal no matter what decade you play a sport or no matter what decade you work at a company.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, I think um, the NFL is not only a business, but it's performance, and people want to see more offense, and people want to see touchdown celebrations, and people want to see those kind of things because they're fun. And when you take a guy like Walter Payton, he always said, "Why are you celebrating when you make it to the end zone? You should show people that you've been there before, right? Not that big of a deal." And he's there over 100 times, right? So,
Sure.
um, yeah. So when you go celebrate all the time, it's like, what's the big deal? I do this all the time, right? So, um, but I think fans like to see it. I think, people that watch it, sponsors, whatever, just like to get, that energy, right? The energy of scoring a touchdown and celebrating and doing all that. And, I think social media has a lot to do with that. Guys are really kind of concerned or interested in, what their followers are and how many people they have and all that kind of stuff. We never had to worry about that because we didn't have the internet, right? We didn't have those types of things. And so we weren't really that interested. And I think if you would have maybe go in a time machine and take all those things back there, um, probably half the guys wouldn't have been on the team because they would have broke curfew and been out, and someone would have filmed them, and they would have taken a shot of them, and you know, and so it's just different now. And I mean, there's a lot of tough guys playing in the NFL. There's a lot of great athletes. There's a lot of great guys, and I think it's great. I have no problem with that. I mean, if guys want to celebrate, I have no problem with it because it's on them, right? Because then they better be able to back it up next time because someone's definitely going to feel like, let's see you do this again, right? So, uh, that's about competition.
Definitely, and well said. And it speaks for itself too, where you just see how the evolution of sports, on the one hand, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, hockey, tennis. I mean, some games and the rules change more than others, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be performance based. I mean, we live in a performance based world. It's not just in professional sports, it's in your personal life, raising a family. It's all about, are you equal to the task with your spouse, raising your children? I'm a new father. And so my wife and I, we share responsibilities equally, and we love each other with all of our might. We have a 7-week old son this Friday, and we love him so much. And family.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome. I did all that too. Now you better get up for stay up for the 12 o'clock feeding, and then you better get up for the 5 o'clock feeding too, because I did all that stuff, and I'm just thankful that I did. It just gave me a different perspective on raising kids, and my mom had all four of us in 5 years, and with a little bit different times. So, yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate to be really involved and do all those things as well. So,
Well, talk to me about that with the few minutes we have left, but talk to me about what family is, meant to you, because my wife and our child, means everything to me. And obviously my parents and her parents, I mean, she comes from a big family. My family is a little bit smaller, but, family matters to us. Our faith matters to us. But for you growing up in Western Pennsylvania, talk to me about your town and what growing up was like in Western Pennsylvania, the relationships you had with your parents or siblings, and then how that extrapolated out to you raising your own family and you thinking back to those memories of the 12 p.m. or 5 a.m. bottle feedings. Because I mean, every little moment counts. Every experience matters.
that's great. Yeah, I was really fortunate. I had great parents, and I always said that I didn't have far to look for role models; that they were right down the hall. So I was really fortunate. My dad was a steel mill worker. I learned about work ethic from both my parents. My dad worked in a mill, and then he did like three jobs. He worked in the mill, and then my grandfather had a painting business on the side. So my grandfather worked in the mill for 44 years, so he would help with that. And then when he worked night turn 1 week a month, he would come home and shower and go out in the Sears and Roebuck moving truck for another 8 hours delivering appliances. So he did that for like 20 years, 1 week a month. So I mean, I learned a lot. And my mom worked at J.C. Penney's part time, and she did that. So um, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but we were able to be, those that middle class kind of time, and we did that, and I had a brother and two sisters, and I was the youngest, so I probably took more heat than the rest of them because I think my dad lost all his patience by that time. But I mean, I had great siblings as well. So I mean, a lot of guys don't have that opportunity to have great parents like that, and I did. So, I mean, I'm very fortunate with that. And then in my own family, my wife and I have 3 kids, and they're all great kids. They're all unique in their own way. Um, they're all adults now. 2 are married, but they're doing fantastic. And you know what? That's what life's about, right? Is raising kids and seeing them, be successful and seeing them be out on their own and doing those things. So, my wife and I are very fortunate to have great kids, and yeah, but it's a journey as well, right? I mean, it's a journey, and I'm just glad to be kind of a passenger on it, and watching my kids and how they're developing as well, and just waiting for grandkids. No grandkids yet, so I'm waiting for that. So
And
looking for.
how many children do you have?
I have 3 kids. Yeah, 2 boys and a girl. My girl's in the middle. My younger son Scott and is married. Jessica's married, and my oldest son Casey's the holdout. He's not married yet, but we're hoping for some grandkids one day, and that's my wife and I are hoping.
How long have you and your wife been married?
My wife and I have been married for 39 years. We'll be married for 40 years, May 14th.
Wow, that's amazing. My parents are going to be married 40 years, April 17th.
Yeah,
So they were also married in 1983.
we were March or May 14th, 1983. So yeah, and you know, and that's another thing. When you have the opportunity to, to spend, to marry someone you love and then spend your life with them and have children and grow together. That's incredible. A lot of people don't have an opportunity to do that, and a lot of times, I think sometimes it's easy to kind of um, to just kind of call it quits, right? Or say, I don't want to do this anymore. Or maybe it gets a little bit difficult. I mean, it gets difficult in a lot of things. It gets difficult in your personal life, gets difficult in your work life, gets difficult in a lot of things. I mean, what makes it special is persevering through those, right? And
Right.
working hard. And I think that's what makes it special.
Yeah, absolutely. And perseverance. One of my first mentors, he was my first mentor back in high school. And he was my high school history teacher, Mr. Bradshaw. He had a JD, so Dr. Bradshaw in the legal profession, but big sports fan, also from Pennsylvania, grew up a Philadelphia Phillies and Eagles fan, also from Pennsylvania and now in Florida for many years. And one of the things he had said to me was that, I have the perseverance necessary for the long haul. I only say that because I wanted to bring up my mentor and what he said about me because I've always lived by that. I've always lived by having perseverance necessary for the long haul. And I feel that, talking to you, Jim, you're a man of great perseverance because, you speak about it, with your wife and marriage. You talk about it even in your college days at Pittsburgh with Coach Moore, and obviously getting into the NFL. And the first couple seasons were difficult with the Bears, and then a short time later you're Super Bowl champions. I mean, you've experienced it in each aspect of your life. And what messages do you have for your kids who are growing up in 2022? I'm a millennial. What advice do you have for younger generations in 2022 that you wish certain things or certain principles were instilled back when you were growing up and you wish that were instilled today?
Well, I think a lot of those things are still here. I think a lot of those I think a lot of those principles of perseverance and work ethic, hard work, and all those things, I think are still there. I just think maybe sometimes they get overshadowed by other things. I think they get overshadowed by, you know, a little bit of narcissism, where people want to put their stuff on, Facebook and on, all these social media platforms and want people to like them. And if they don't like them, then they feel like there's something wrong with them. I mean, yeah, it's not always about them, right? It's about other people as well. So I think social media in some ways has been incredibly beneficial to our world in general, right? I mean, the things that it's alerted you to, and there's disasters and other things, and just whatever. Um, the amount of information that you can see is incredible, right? But I think a lot of times what happens is when it turns inward and becomes more narcissism, that's when you start looking at it like, every day you got to wake up and look at your phone and say what someone said about me or what messages I got or what I did. Or I think it was much better when you had one telephone in the house, and it was a rotary dial phone, and you couldn't call long distance on it because you weren't allowed, and you didn't get very many phone calls, and life was simpler. Life was simpler, and I think that coming from a little bit more simpler life, I think then you were able to have a value system you were able to establish, right? That I think is allowing you to, like I talk about, persevering and overcoming, um, difficulties and challenges. And now, when you have this kind of structure that is more driven through, you know, what can I do for someone else? What can I do to make my brand better? What can I do to make myself better? What can I do that, and it's more selfish in nature. Then I think it's hard to have those principles take root, right? And I think that's difficult. So I wish we'd get back a little bit more. No, that sounds old fashioned, but I think maybe if you had a little bit more of that in the world, world would be a better place.
Well, you speak, from the heart, and I can definitely relate to you. I mean, my wife's parents are going to be married, 42 years in 2023. Their anniversary is April 26th, 1981. It's great. I've always considered myself an old soul. My wife and I, we feel like we're old souls, modern, but we have those old soul type of personalities, and what you speak about. My wife and I, grew up listening to those same messages. And I feel ironically saying this, but, we kind of feel like dinosaurs too, because the baby boomers, their messages for their children could always be, front and center. I can't speak to younger generations. I believe I can relate to them, but I had baby boomer parents. I mean, parents who are similar to in age to you. So your messages are what I can relate to. And I'm always, with relationship building, you want to be able to relate to not just, maybe your generation or your parents' generation, but other generations. So that as a society, you can coexist with, people who may have, differences of opinion or ideas, but at the same time, in the same light, rather, everybody understands what hard work is. Everybody understands what performance is, and being true to your word, and having integrity, and being honest and forthright, and doing the best job possible with every God-given talent that he or she has. So that's what relationship building means to me, and I sounds like a relationship building means to you the same way.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, and I think you hit it right on the head. You're spot on, and I would just encourage people to uh, that are mentoring people, that are trying to get people to understand the value of hard work, the value of a set of values that I think are really important. People People do mission statements all the time. People do mission, vision, value statements all the time for work and, in your company. But, like, what's your mission statement, right? I mean, what's your vision, right? I mean, what do you aspire to as a person? And then, what's your values? And I think doing some personal mission, vision, values is an important thing as well, right? If you're a young executive starting out, trying to break into the world, you know, what's your foundation? How are you going to build your, business off of, right? And I think building a foundation is really important. And I think doing one of those for yourself is, I think, pretty valuable.
Absolutely. And also giving back to the community. And you're so very much involved in the community. Are you doing any community related events this Christmas season?
No, I'm not this Christmas season, but I work a lot with Gridiron Greats, which is a charity that Mike Ditka started, um, and we're really out there to help a lot of players who played in the league a long time ago that just do not have the financial wherewithal for doctor's appointments, transportation, housing, food, so all those things. So really, I think it's Karen Wright does a great job there. Mike Ditka started with Jerry Kramer, and I just try to help out with that as much as I can, and then some other local ones as well too. So we're having that around Super Bowl, that cigar dinner that raises a lot of money, but nothing around the holidays. Just going to spend time with the family.
That's wonderful. And I'm so happy that you work with your former coach, Mike Ditka, on something very special and giving back to the community and also helping former players who definitely need your support, Jim, as well as your coach, Ditka. Any last words about relationship building in a team environment that we haven't covered before we depart from our interview?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground, Garrett. I think it's an interesting approach that you're taking with on the business side of it, and I think relationship building is so important in any aspect, not just in your personal life, but in your business life as well. And it's hard work though. I mean, it's culture, and building a great culture in a company is about relationships, right? And how you treat people and how you want to be treated. And I think that's important. So I think you're doing a great service here. So congratulations.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate it. Anything I can do to give back to my audience and people who can learn so much about these interviews and listening to these episodes, and your episode will definitely be memorable. And I plan on writing a book on relationship building and team environment and featuring you in one of the chapters of my book. So I look forward to staying in contact with you, having many more conversations, and updating you on my podcast and my book. Thank you again, Jim, for being with me today on the WaveCapital's guest speaker series on relationship building and a team environment. Merry Christmas to you.
And
And thank you.
same to you, and same to you and your wife, and congratulations again.
Thank you so much. And congrats to you, and my best to you and your family as well. You take care.
Okay, you got it. Thanks.
God bless. Bye bye.